Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Hi, Jim. Thank you.
A radiation alert for people who might not like the fact that the U.S. Armed Forces will be holding exercises in September where electronic warfare weapons will be blasting away in the stratosphere, or maybe not the stratosphere, the lower atmosphere, where you're very concerned. Maybe explain why you're upset that right across from Victoria and southern Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands, they're going to be conducting these warfare exercises, zapping all this electronic radiation.
Well, you just summed it up beautifully. This has been going on for a year now. The people on the Olympic Peninsula have been fighting this. The U.S. Navy, without consulting with the public, announced plans to begin electromagnetic warfare over the Olympic Peninsula, the Northern Peninsula, which includes a UNESCO heritage site. Beautiful, beautiful forests, land with animals and everything. And they found out about it basically when the Navy came and said, we're going to start, building our infrastructure. This is going to start this September, and it's going to be indefinite. It could last for 10 years, 15 years. The plans are to have hundreds of flights each day, each workday. It's 250 days of the year. And these planes are going to be flying at 1,200 feet, so that people on mountains like me, they could be like 200 feet above my head. And they're going to be aiming their electromagnetic weapons at targets on the Olympic Peninsula. Now, we know that this sort of noise is horrible. It's going to be terribly disruptive to anybody who's under them. And we know that they'll by nature, they can't just, show up at the Olympic Peninsula. They're going to be flying over southern British Columbia, over the islands, over Vancouver Island, and probably the southern mainland, depending upon the wind and whatever other forces, they take into consideration. And I want to know where our government is. Nobody has said anything. I've been writing, and many people in the coalition have been writing to our federal MPs, to our MLAs, and to our local governments, asking them, please, get involved here. Don't we have a say over what's happening in our airspace and to our residents? Not to mention the animals. Can you imagine the whales and the orcas that are going to be affected by this? The noise is going to be horrendous, and the radiation is going to be extremely high. These are strong weapons that they're using. And this is going to start this September. I would encourage everyone to go on to a site. It's called SaveTheOlympicPeninsula.org. And there's a 10-minute video there showing the area that's going to be the target area, and something about the planes. Now, Jim, I understand you know a lot about planes. You can tell me. They say that these planes that are right now flying off Whidbey Island are deafening, and they only have a few flying off Whidbey a day. We're going to have hundreds each day.
Well, the aircraft they're going to be using is the EA18 Growler. It's a two-seater version of the F-18 Super Hornet. The Canadian Air Force flies the CF-18 Hornet, which is 25% smaller. But these basically are Hornet fighters on steroids, and the airplane will have about a half a dozen or so what they call jamming pods underneath the wings that are designed to jam enemy radar and other electronic sensor systems that they might use to be found out. But of course, in an aggressive mode, they're trying to knock out the enemy's radar and other sensors as well. So that's the radiation that you're worried about. Basically,
yes,
it's a flying microwave oven.
It's going to be terrible. And they'll be shooting at all other places and things it's impossible to imagine that we cannot be impacted significantly. There are areas on the island, for instance, in Souk, that's only like 7 or 8 miles away from the target area. Victoria is not that far either, maybe 20 miles. And these planes cover that in just seconds. What's going to happen? And why is our government so silent? I haven't seen a single article in the mainstream news about this at all.
Now, here's the thing, as I'm reading here on the internet about the the EA18 Growler. It's got 3 radar jamming pods together with a receiver and a communications countermeasure system. So in other words, these jammers will be at different frequencies. I don't know, maybe people in southern BC, you might lose your television or radio reception. I don't know, because these things are designed to knock out anything the enemy might be using to find out where they are.
What about the infrastructure, for instance, the fire stations and the police radios? Will they be jammed?
Paramedics? We don't know.
Yeah.
Because again, the Navy and the armed forces don't tell you what they're going to do because it's all top secret. And
Yep.
they won't tell you. I mean, it could be designed to knock out civilian stuff.
Or it could even happen accidentally. They're testing these things. We don't know what else they're going to be testing. That's what they're telling you they're testing and what they have on board. What else do they have on those planes that we don't know about?
And the thing is, the entire EA-18G Growler fleet will be based at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, Washington, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Victoria.
Yep. And look at all the islands around there. The people in Whidbey are very upset. The people on the Olympic Peninsula are upset. And UNESCO, United Nations, is protesting it because this is a historical heritage site. It is just horrendous. If they need to test these things, why don't they go out and test them in the deserts? There's plenty of places around where there are very few people. Why do it where you've got live, the wildlife? They say, oh, well, we won't bother the deer. The deer and the moose and the birds, they won't even be aware of it. Sure. They won't be aware of it. They don't feel it. They don't move. I mean, birds, we know the birds are affected with their navigational system by cell towers. This isn't going to affect them. There are many places where they could be going to test these things where the populations are not going to be affected.
Well,
but this is more convenient.
The Growler is capable of taking off from aircraft carriers and landing on them. So why not take it out to the middle of the ocean? Again, in the middle of the ocean, there isn't a lot of wildlife out there to disturb. And I was going to say too, there are those giant piles of plastic.
Yeah, they could zap those.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jim, but people need to know. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to tell your listeners. It's time. It's time for people to get involved. We should be demanding that this be stopped. How dare they fly over my home? They're going to be just a few feet above my home as they come heading toward the Olympic Peninsula. You tell me that my family isn't going to be involved here? We sure as heck are. And so are all the people in Victoria, on Salt Spring, on all of the islands, and I'll bet you the people in the Vancouver area are too.
We'll have more with Sharon Noble right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Well, Sharon, on the smart meter front, in West Vancouver, 2 suspicious fires that might have been caused by smart meters?
There are suspicious fires happening all over the place, and getting information is virtually impossible. As I told you, I think the last time we talked, Hydro will not provide information. They're hiding behind the Freedom of Information Act. The fire commissioner gets no information, so he has nothing to share. The BC Utilities Commission and the BC Safety Authority have been told they can't get involved. I think I told you also, Jim, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating it, but there's a recent legal document that I obtained from Texas. It's a bit of a convoluted story, but there was a linesman, and as you know, linesmen are the people who are generally involved with installing meters and keeping the infrastructure. They are the experts on this. And this fellow was the head of his union group, and he was very aware that the smart meters are blowing up and causing fires. He was afraid that some of his installers would be hurt. So he was speaking out against these things that explode, and he was fired. And so he sued for wrongful dismissal. And the court found that, it's still ongoing, but we got his briefing document, and the court said, yes, he was not treated fairly. All he was doing was trying to get the truth out there, and part of the truth is that the Itron open-way meters the same ones we're using here, are burning and exploding all over the place in Texas. He said that they have pallets of burned meters in their warehouse, and these are the very same meters. He said they're exploding, and he said specifically that there was one design flaw that he thought was responsible for many of the fires. The meters, as we know, have never been certified to go into the meter base. The meter base on our homes was designed, tested, and certified to hold an analog and not anything else. It has never been approved to hold a digital or a smart meter. And in Texas, they found that the blades of the smart meter are thinner than the blades of the analog. This leaves a space, a gap, that leads to arcing, that leads to fires. Any electrician will tell you that if you've got a gap, there's going to be arcing and fires. And this fellow in Texas, his name is Reed, maintains that this is one of the major problems. Not the only one, but one of the major problems. The meter bases don't fit. And when I found this legal document, it's testimony, and there were several people who were confirming that they found it in Centerpoint. They found it with Landis Gear meters, a different brand. They found it with those. Same problem. I wrote to Bill Bennett. I wrote to John Horgan. I sent copies to every MLA saying that, look, now we have legal testimony. We have independent testimony to what I and others have been saying for the last 2 years. These things have design flaws. Itron knew it. Itron has known this for years. They no doubt knew that these same flaws, they should have. If they didn't, they're incompetent. Know that these things were not fit to put into our meter bases. So when Hydro says, oh, the meter's not the problem, it's your base. Well, in fact, they're right. It's the base. The base was not made to hold these things. And we should be demanding to get our money back. We should be demanding for a recall. If you bought a defective toaster, if it didn't do what it was supposed to do, if it blew up, you'd ask for your money back. Well, and we should be asking for our money back.
You mentioned an ironic situation involving Health Canada and a recall. Maybe tell us about that, and then you're wondering why can't they recall smart meters?
Yeah, well, last week there was a recall for adult hoodies that are made by various companies, but there were 5 complaints to Health Canada about these adult hoodies where the elastic snapped back in the faces. Now, sure, this can be dangerous. It can take out an eye. It can really hurt you. The hoodies were all recalled. Okay, we've got evidence of hundreds of meter failures. I've got lists and pictures of meters that have melted and burned on homes in British Columbia. Why aren't we having a recall? Don't our lives matter as much as someone's face being snapped? I'm not saying that it's not important to recall the hoodie. That's the right thing to do. But so is recalling our smart meters. And I sent out a press release because, Jim, for the last 5 years I've been talking to John Horgan, and the only thing that is consistent about the NDP is that they don't want to spend this money. They didn't think the money was spent wisely, but they wouldn't do anything about it because the contract had been signed. Well, now we've got proof that we were sold a defective product, and we should be demanding our money back, demand that Itron put our analogs back on our homes, and demand that they pay for every cent that's been incurred by both Hydro and Fortis. Why are they allowing this to continue? And I haven't had a single response.
Well, your letter that you sent to the energy minister, wasn't it a registered letter?
Yes. Yep. I paid $14 to have that delivered to him. And I haven't even had an acknowledgement. That was 3 weeks ago.
And it wasn't returned to you as not picked up?
Nope. In fact, I've got acknowledgement that it was signed for. I don't understand how they can know that we've got this evidence. And in Quebec, they announced, Quebec Hydro admitted that there have been 500 Elster meters that have burned. That's a different brand. So now we've got Itron, we have Census, we have Landis Gear, and we have Elster meters that are burning. These meters are all the same. This is what electrical engineers who've taken them apart said. They are all the same. They have the same bloody design flaws. And, the meter bases are on all of our homes. I believe that what's going to happen is that the government is going to, the Hydro is going to get a new meter base made for the smart meter. And they're going to say, people, you've got to pay the $400 to have the meter base replaced on your home because your meter base is faulty. You own the meter base, you have to replace it. And then we will have to pay the $400 to replace the base, change the wiring, so that Hydro can put their smart meter on our homes.
In Colorado, you said there are efforts, again, to get people away from the main power grid so that they're not at the mercy of these mega utility companies.
It's happening quite a few different places, especially in Europe. But Boulder, Colorado right now is looking at the plans that a fellow named Timothy Schleckel, I've talked about him a few times. He's written several books about the dangers of these massive grids that are going across North America, the vulnerabilities to hacking, to accidents, and everything. He's been saying the best thing to do is to have neighborhood grids or community grids where you make your own electricity from sun, from wind, from water, whatever. You use it where you make it, and this is what Boulder's going to be doing. They're concentrating on renewable. They're going to be, from the sounds of it, using primarily sun, perhaps wind, maintaining it, and using it there. They're going to be getting off the grid. And I think we should be considering that everywhere. In British Columbia, we have sun, we have wind, we have water. Why should we be paying for hydro to make all these stupid, irresponsible decisions?
And we have tidal power as well that's being ignored.
We do. Yep. And I think that we should be looking at all of these options. Hydro is going bankrupt because of all these stupid decisions. Another thing is like Site C. This is another project that I circulated a chapter from a book that Eric Anderson, who's an economist, is writing about all the collusion, all the stupid decisions with Site C. There are no justifications for it. Hydro is misrepresenting the amount of energy that's going to be needed over the next 20 to 30 years. Site C will not be available to produce energy for another 20 or 30 years. And each year, the demand has been going down, not up, as Hydro is saying. People are using more efficient appliances, using less electricity where possible because it's so darned expensive, and also many people are getting renewable, get solar panels and whatever to supplement or to replace their requirements. Site C is not needed. They're also building this massive earth dam in an area that's prone to earthquakes and where fracking is occurring. The native people there are going to be displaced. Wonderful farmland is going to be ruined. Why? When it's not needed, it's because of the corporate influence. This is just one more reason we should be divesting ourselves. We should be getting away from hydro because these debts are going to be strangling us and our children.
Sharon, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you for coming back, Jim. I always enjoy talking with you.
Well, we always find out something new that you don't see on the television news or in the newspaper.
Well, I certainly hope that people will talk to about this recall. I'm serious about it. Itron has committed fraud. They've told us about the safety of these issues, or the meters. They've talked about the levels of radiation. They have told us so many misrepresentations, and they've sold us a defective product. We should be clamoring. We should be demanding a recall. And I hope your listeners will help with this. Please go to our website, www.stopsmartmetersbc.com. Get the information that's there. And please, let's get a recall going.
Again, Sharon, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Jim.
My guest has been Sharon Noble, director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Check out our popular YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. You can find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Comments about the show can be sent to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.